the stories and dreams of NewEdo expand, grow, and form into reality. Joining these stories just takes one step. Now, we have 77 places to start. This week on the podcast, join me, Zach Walsh, as I welcome back Russ of Salty Games to talk about the newest supplement to NewEdo, 77 Stories in NewEdo. Jam-packed with information for storytellers both in and out of the NewEdo system, this package will give you hooks, characters, and prompts to get you started in the neon city of NewEdo. Adventure awaits us right now on Schedule for Launch. Welcome to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I'm incredibly excited to be rejoined by Salty of NewEdo. Thank you so much for coming back, Salty. This has been a couple weeks in the making, but I'm really excited to have you back and just be talking more NewEdo, really.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you putting this together on fairly quick notice here.
I always feel like people forget too that you're one of the few creators I've met in real life. I've been at your table once, and that was a lot of fun. And yeah, I really like NewEdo, especially after I got to sit down and actually play it with you. It was a very interesting game that's far less difficult to pick up than it seems on paper.
Yeah, that's a fair, criticism or observation that it's a big chonky book, right? And
yeah.
And, I advertise it as, I call it medium plus crunch.
Yep.
And that plus is dependent on whether you started back in the 80s or 90s or if you started in the 2010s. And there's no judgment there. It's just newer games tend to be a bit lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And but watching the creator play a games can be very different than picking it up from scratch and just going at it.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, somewhat on topic here, both the fact that we're recording this now and that you've sat down at a table with me over there at Mecha Games is that I hope to get, if not live, then at least a recording of a game session in before this year ends. And I'd love to invite you to come back to be part of that over at Mecha.
I would love that. We'll have to talk more about that in the near future.
For sure.
It's such a cool game. It's a little bit trickier to play than 5e, but I would even say that it might be easier to play than Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So it falls into this really sweet spot, and I like it a lot. I like how combat is not necessary, even if I played a combat focused character and I didn't do a whole lot of punching until shit hit the fan. So
yeah, I guess rounding back to the core product here, NewEdo was built on the back of Old World of Darkness and Legend of the Five Rings for the most part. And it shares cyberpunk and Shadowrun aesthetics, but I didn't play any cyberpunk RPGs. And I did play Shadowrun way, way back in the day, back in, I think, 2 or 3E. And, it was cool to being a D&D player and seeing your favorite elves and dwarves and magic popping up in a modern setting with cool cars and guns and shit like that. But the mechanics of it made it unwieldy for me and my friends, and we just dropped it. And I would always curiously stick my nose back into Shadowrun's business every couple of years, and I'd just never been satisfied with the gameplay. But NewEdo, well, it looks a lot like both of those games. It functions a lot more like an Old World of Darkness or Legend of the Five Rings game, probably 3E or 4E, not 5E for L5R. And the crunch in NewEdo is definitely front loaded. And so the fact that you played a pre-gen at the table, I believe, right? Or did you bring a character?
I played Mai.
Yeah, exactly. You played Punchy Mai. That this game was built for character generation, customization, and development. I'm the kind of geek I still play 5e once in a while, sit down and take 2 weeks to make a level 1 5e character, where there's really only two important decisions to make. Yeah. And at the end of the day, no matter what your decisions are, it won't affect what you can do because everything comes out perfectly functional. And I'll take happily hours and hours and hours to do that. So I made NewEdo to be more complicated, more gratifying than that for character creation, in a sense where it's got a priority buy system wherein You have to give priority to character components like your magical ability, your augmentations, your cybernetics, your skills, your core traits, and your backgrounds. But unlike Shadowrun, your lineage, the physical form your character takes, your race, whatever you want to call it, isn't part of that priority buy. So there's no RP cost to choosing how you want to play your character, what you want your character to look like. You don't have to just optimize to um, whatever the best race is for that build.
Yeah.
But then it just goes on from there. The game has unique mechanics that actually reward and encourage and develop role playing, and we can get into that later, more or less, or not, or we can look into it elsewhere. But ultimately, it's a game not built for pre-gens, but which I've sent out with pre-gens because, of course, you can't play at a convention or at a local game store for a one shot with by spending 6 hours with everybody to make a first time character.
It's one of the best character creators I've ever used, and like, I think I told you that last time we talked how much I love the character creator. I have busted open my copy of NewEdo just to make characters.
Amazing.
And then go, I will bring this character somewhere else down the line if I get the chance.
Well, hey man, it is my favorite part of gaming is character creation. So folks listening to this that wonder like, oh, should I dive in or should I give a new system a chance? Maybe you don't care about the aesthetic, or maybe you don't care about the themes, which hopefully we'll talk about later. But if you're a character creation geek, at least give this a shot. Come, you don't have to buy it. Come talk to the Discord, read our website, go on to DTRPG where you can find more about it and get a sense of what character creation is like, because it is just so gratifying. But for folks who don't care about character creation, just want to pick up a pre-gen or they don't really give a shit about what they're playing, they want to play the game, then this may not be the game for you. And I don't want to, this isn't a game for everybody. This is there's more to it than just this, but this is a game for character geeks.
Yeah, it really is. So we're almost 10 minutes in, but Salty, we still haven't really told folks who you are. So for those who may not remember who you are or are joining us for the first time, you want to give a little introduction?
Sure. Thanks. So I'm Russ, aka Salty of Salty Games. Salty Games was something that fell out of my creation of NewEdo, the role-playing game, which has been in development for 9 years now. It started while I was traveling, writing fiction, writing a game around that fiction, changing the game, etc., etc. But then really came into, was born into the world during a Kickstarter that I ran 2 years ago, and fall or November of almost exactly 2 years ago, November of 2021, that I didn't really know what to expect. It was a funny time. COVID had kept me home for the whole summers of 2020 and 2021. This hobby of mine, developing this game, had been accelerated by, frankly, a lot of free time that I, may or may not have chosen to take if I was given the option, but I wasn't given the option. And that Kickstarter made this go from a pocket project into the real world, and I had no clue what I was getting into. No clue at all. A good friend of mine had done the Kickstarter road a couple of times on skirmish games. And he's a very casual, but man of few words, and said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You're smart. You'll figure it out." Gave me a couple of pointers, and off I went. And then that Kickstarter blew up. I mean, we're not talking 6 digits here or anything like that, but it was way higher than I expected. And that kind of was a slap in the face, like, holy shit, you really have to take this seriously now. If I just barely funded the thing, I would have put out a product that I was happy with, that was tested, that had been in development for years. But with the way that the response was, and frankly, the community feedback and the immediate uptake and the positivity and the online reinforcement in a positive way, which seems to be a rare thing, it really kicked my ass to take this thing from a functional game to I don't know, to a zeitgeist, to something bigger, and it's turned into that. So Salty Games, we have one other game. It's a skirmish game, not ironically, but NewEdo is our core thing. It's what I spend dozens of hours a week on, creating new product or content, but also into speaking with the community, working on this Kickstarter that we can get into, annoying my wife by just tweaking one little piece of art, or spending another half hour on just a little bit more lore, whatever it may be. And it's turned this passion of mine into a quasi business, which I never really expected, which is a whole other subject matter of your hobbies turning into businesses. But
Yeah.
but that's it. So I created NewEdo, didn't know what to expect, and here we are talking about my second and their attached third release under the title, and I'm very stoked.
One of my favorite things that I can remember was when I was trying to get in contact with you, and the guys at Mecca were like, hey, he's going to be busy for a while. From what I understand, he spends a lot of time in his garage just packing boxes right now. That was one of our first hurdles to getting our first interview set up.
Yeah. The unexpected, not downsides, but the logistics, and every article you read and every bit of good advice that people put out for free that have done it before say, don't fuck yourself in your successes. Be ready for it. And NewEdo was NewEdo's Kickstarter was more of a success than I expected.
Yeah.
But even looking at the numbers, I thought, okay, well, I can get those into my basement and ship them out. No problem at all. I don't have a 9 to 5. I have a weird job schedule. I can work from home. I can work around it. My wife is supportive and is very enthusiastic about helping me through this. I can do this from my basement, no problem. And eventually did. But holy shit, that wasn't what I was expecting. And I mean, the problem is with this book that you create and it's got your name on it, you want to hand touch everything. You want it to, they're all hand wrapped. There's custom stickers. There's all this stuff. It can't just be shipped out of a warehouse somewhere, which I can't lie might happen in the future after this experience. But those 2 months were every day I go down to the basement and pack as many books as I could until the paper cuts got too much for me. I had to stop some nights because I wrapped NewEdo in brown paper for the first little while, and I would find bloody thumbprints on them from the paper cuts. I'm like, I can't send that with a bloody thumbprint. As cool as it may be, this is still COVID, and nobody wants that. So, or some agency's gonna find me and lock me up for bio weaponry, whatever the fuck. So, but that was I don't want to ever go back to those times, and thank you for reminding me of them. But there was a lot of time spent in my windowless basement for those 2 months, for sure.
So what we're really set up to talk about right now, and the main aim of this talk, is a new part of the NewEdo line of books, and something it's really designed for NewEdo, but can be utilized by a lot of people, and that's 77 stories in NewEdo. What is this book?
So, 77 stories in NewEdo. These are a bunch of plots that I've either used in my own campaigns or in my own stories or fiction, or things that I've thought up that were suitable for my NewEdo, the game world. And that's easy to say that sure, everyone's got that. Why is it special? Why bother going to all the effort? The genesis is that NewEdo is not cyberpunk. And you look at it and you say that's a cyberpunk book. Anyone that takes a quick glance at the cover of NewEdo will say that's a cyberpunk book. It's a Shadowrun clone. It's a whatever the hell. And it's not. And you say, oh, okay, well, you're just trying to make some special thing. You're not that fucking special. But what makes cyberpunk? And you can talk days on end and get into debates about it, but really what it comes down to is cyberpunk has a theme, and it's high-tech, low life. And that's rebellion, resistance, oppression, and like scraping by. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly popular. Look at the absolute explosion of cyberpunk content that's come out in the last couple of years. Now, there's
Yeah.
obviously a social underlying pressure that's driving that, but we can leave that for the moment. Yeah, but NewEdo is set in a massive neon city with holographic advertisements and hover cars and all the same shit you see in cyberpunk style content. But what makes it different is the themes. The themes of NewEdo, aspiration and change. And the themes of cyberpunk are rebellion and resistance. And those create a dramatic difference at the table. Now, do the themes of your game or your book or the content, whatever, define how you play your stories? And the answer is no. You can play Cyberpunk with whatever adventures you want to play them, Cyberpunk the game or Shadowrun the game or any of the, fucking Cyborg the game, in whatever themes, adventure styles, fluffy to friendly to horror to resistance that you want. But, how the book is presented, how the art is presented, how the content is presented will influence the style, the games that you want to play. But despite the fact that NewEdo has the trappings of cyberpunk genre, it doesn't necessarily explain in the core rulebook why it isn't cyberpunk, and certainly we don't go into it so explicitly as that.
Yeah.
And after publication and after it started to come out into the world, I'd have these conversations constantly. Oh, you put out a new cyberpunk game. Like, it's not actually cyberpunk, and I'm not just saying that. Oh, okay, buddy, sure, whatever. What makes it not cyberpunk? And it's these themes. And we'll again leave aside why I made the themes the way they are. But then you come to themes of aspiration and change. What the fuck is aspiration and change? It, in if my story is set in a world that isn't oppression, where the cops aren't your immediate enemies all the time, where the state isn't trying to crush you under their thumb, or corporations will turn and burn you for pennies. If the setting isn't those, what the hell am I doing in the Neon City? Because every Neon City game you can name, the themes are rebellion, resistance, capitalism, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to tell this story so many times about what kind of adventures you could play in a non-oppression based Neon City. That I'm like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to write a book about the stories you can tell in a non-oppression based Neon City. And that's how the 77 stories came to be. Here's 77 stories not about an oppressive dystopia, but set in a neon urban adventure city. Is that a succinct enough answer? I guess I could have just said that.
I think it is. The thing that we really explored when we played was our characters were trying to stop a bank robbery for no other reason than I can't super remember why they were robbing the bank. I had to leave pretty quick, but it was like, oh, you're trying to stop a bank robbery, and our characters were like, one person was like a cop. My character was kind of like an underground cage fighter, and then there was like a back alley doctor. It was like, it was really cool, but the consensus was, hey, this district is pretty peaceful and we don't want things to go really bad, so like how can we help our neighborhood?
Right. And I mean, the tough part, getting back to what we were saying earlier, is that session threw together it was seven, wasn't it? Seven players
Yeah, there was
playing.
7 or 8 of us.
I think two or three folks had shown up with their own characters, which is incredible, and then 4 or 5 people playing pre-gens. And those pre-gens and those characters obviously had not had a session zero. There was no alignment on what kind of games you wanted to play, what your themes were, what your goals for your characters or the city or for your adventures were. And so it was me just basically forcing you to have an adventure together, which is not ideal in a game that is intended to have multiple paths to resolution, moral gray areas, no definitive right or wrong, literally zero concept of evil in the game, such that session zero is a very important thing, but you can't just tell people to go out and buy 6 copies of the book and sit down and spend 5 hours together doing session zeros. So that all 8 of you got together and said, okay, let's just suspend disbelief for a moment and try to stop it, or at least figure out why this bank robbery is happening, and that's what it was. It was a half heist, half mystery
Hmm.
that I was using you guys to test out a part of a bigger adventure module, shamelessly.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, but it didn't require that you go gun down whomever you'd been pointed at and assume that there's a gun pointed at the back of your head in the meantime, which is the defining differentiating factor of this game setting versus other neon splashed urban game settings.
Yeah. So what I was going to get at though is like our characters, even though they had such different backgrounds, the city and obviously like you're able to do this a little quicker. I think that 77 stories helps it with new GMs
Yeah,
to the system, but our characters were able to be like, this is why we're working together right now. I mean, you have the one character, I can't remember his name right now, but there's a gun-toting assassin style character who is like, what can I do to not kill? And it's just like such an interesting take to be able to throw characters that in other games would clash a lot, but in NewEdo fold together a little easier because the world is so established. All in all, though, characters can work together a lot easier in NewEdo than other systems, even if they have some opposing beliefs, because opposing beliefs and how things change and personal growth are so key and integral to how NewEdo runs.
yeah. The character development again, kind of going back to the start here, is it's not just a part of the rules or like I made it a complicated and rewarding character development system for character geeks. It also becomes part of gameplay.
Yeah.
So a core tenet of the game world, and that what makes it an alternate reality, not an alternate timeline, is that belief defines reality. So things that become believed in for long enough, and for the most part, we're talking about myths and monsters and all of that, the mythologies become true. And that's what creates the world supernatural, the game setting supernatural, because
Hmm.
like our world, people have these fantastic ideas about what might be out there going bump in the night, and or what they're praying to, and or whatever it may be. But those beliefs in the game world of NewEdo can force reality to conform. So enough people believe in something, it will become true. Now, that's a very macro effect that you can't just go out and decide you're going to believe that you're Superman or whatever it may be, and have that
Hmm.
be true. But on micro effects, it's what makes characters do the fantastic things they can do. To be amazing, you have to build up your own legend, capital L, game term legend. Um, and that's a reason to role play. And I don't mean put on a funny voice and wear a hat and whatever like that, but there's more reason to get into a NewEdo character than just building a cool character and going out to fulfill a mission in the gritty city for a couple of synth bucks. It's you will get more powerful, and not I don't just mean experience points. I mean there's 5 or 7 ways to iteratively reward characters in the middle of a game session based on what they do, what the players have them do, but the primary one is legend. And at first, players, whether new to the system or starting a new character, it may not be immediately obvious coming into NewEdo how you do that with a new character. You might look at a bunch of statistics and think, I've got a fighter, I've got a sweet talker, I've got a spellcaster. Let's just see how the mechanics work, and then I'll think of a legend later. I'll think of what I want to be famous for.
Hmm.
But these 77 stories in NewEdo and passionate and engaged storytelling, which is easier for me as the creator, but which I'm hoping to foster with other storytellers in the system, rewards players for doing what they want to do, but like leaning into it. And I don't
Yeah.
just mean like you get 2 extra experience points, Zach. Congratulations! It's your characters get better, and they get better at the things that they're doing. So throwing together a disparate group of PCs at the start can be a little bit tricky, like any game system. Because one, what are their motivations, and two, should they be working together? Blah blah blah. But allowing them to lean into their strengths and showcase what they're good at and what they want to be good at is rewarding to the players. And when they see that they're not all just trying to be the guy doing the most damage per turn, or I'm the tank, no, I'm the tank, no, I'm the healer, no, I'm the healer, whatever it may be. There's only 4 trope class, whatever roles in a combat based game, at least. That you're not competing with the other players, you're synergizing with them. That you see those points start to ping, 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 ping around the table, and holy shit, it makes me so happy to see. And like to see 8 new NewEdo players at that game session that you were at. At first, everyone's like, "Okay, let's just play a new game." But by the end of it, people are like, "Oh, I can't wait to do this. Oh man, my thing does that thing with your thing real good. Okay, make sure that this happens." Like to watch that happen is magic for a game developer. So, anyways, I'm glad that you saw it as well.
I loved it too, and I think one of the strongest points in NewEdo is that because of the setting, because of the laws in the base setting, we're talking a lot about the base setting because 77 Stories is set in NewEdo.
Yep.
When somebody does something that puts the group in danger, watching everybody panic to find group safety is hysterical and a lot of fun. We accidentally killed a guy and everything went to shit. And it was just because the damage roll was so high.
Yeah, and for folks new to the system, it is a game world that is, we're talking not if not lawful good, then lawful neutral in a conceptual sense from a pure what can and should you get away with.
Guns are illegal.
Guns are illegal in the game.
Yeah.
Murder is illegal. It's a law-abiding. I call it a functioning democracy, even though in lore it's not really much of a democracy. It's a mid 21st century setting where you can't just wander around and get into a gunfight and or murder a dude and or whatever it may be and expect there to be no repercussions. And when I was first testing the system way back years and years and years ago, of course, players love to push the boundary of what they can do and steal from the merchant and whatever it may be. And so I had to put in the Deus Ex Machina, which is Neo-Sama, the SWAT squad, what do you call it in Cyberpunk, the heavies, and they come down and stomp you if you are being murder hobos in my city. In NewEdo, as it's canonically written, the Stomp Squad, Neo-Sama, come down and kill you without no concerns over jurisprudence or anything like that. And so it forces everybody to not just murder their way through problems. Now, of course, this is a world where guns may be illegal, but melee weapons are not. It's almost like a feudal 21st century city, such that you're allowed to wear your sword, and folks will still dueling is illegal. And because someone's allowed to wear their sword, someone else can choose to wear a polearm or a goddamn warhammer or whatever it may be, and the cops will keep an eye on you, and the cameras are watching, but it's not illegal. So violence isn't absent from the setting. And Dave Thomavor did a video, which I'm very, very pleased and happy that he did so. But he elided over this violence thing and suggested that there's no violence in the setting. And that's not the case. It's just that the violence either tends to be pointed and political and have repercussions, or be behind closed doors, leaning into the politics, the intrigue, the espionage, whatever your many conflicts are. But you can't just wander around the city killing folks. And so during your game, when that death occurred, and the sirens started going off, and the folks more familiar with the system were like, "Oh fuck, we gotta get undercover quick."
Yeah, we were trying to kidnap somebody to because they were it was we already knew we were going to be in trouble. We were already under the watch. We were trying to take them in because they were attached to this bank robbery.
Yeah.
And then the death occurred because we were loading this person into like basically like a work van, and we just we bailed. We like ditched 2 or 3 party members. Like we're like, just go. Like people were abandoned. Like things were thrown out. We just like got down and ran.
And that on the back of folks more familiar with the setting, I guess. But again, with eight players that don't know each other and 8 characters that don't care about each other, that was always going to be a fucking gong show episode. And it turned out fun regardless. Chaos, pure chaos, of course. But anyway,
it worked out in the end.
Yeah. Everyone had fun, so that's what counts.
So another thing that's really great about 77 Stories is that it is designed for people who are trying to get familiar with the system and the setting and the world. And something that you've done for that is list out some locations. We talked a little bit about this before we started, but I love the location stuff. I think it works really well for new storytellers.
Yeah, and so when I wrote the 77 stories at first, I wrote 77 plot hooks using things that I had used in my campaigns, threw in characters from campaigns and stuff like that. But I didn't really label any of the locations. I didn't call the restaurant Hofuku's. I didn't call the hot springs the Nogura Onsen. I just said you're in a gambling den, you're in an onsen, you're in a restaurant, you're in a whatever. And I sent it out for review to a bunch of indie creators like Zach, like other game developers, like reviewers, and got back some feedback. And a good healthy bit of it was, this was a cool scene. What was that restaurant called? And I said, well, you're a storyteller. Why didn't you just fill it in based on some story that you're currently telling? Put it into a restaurant that you're currently using or you've used in the past. And they said, well, no, I didn't purchase this book, even though no one fucking purchased the book. I didn't purchase this book to be told to create these things. And so it was very easy for me to go back and just pluck out all of the locations and then fill in the details that I'd used in my own stories. To say it's this restaurant, that onsen, this alleyway, that whatever it may be, and turn those into 30 more things. You know, the 77 stories is literally 77 plot hooks or story seeds. And then there's 20 or 25 NPCs that are fleshed out in great detail, and now they've got stats and everything like that. But then I added 30 paragraph length location details that you can just drop into your stories. And Zach, you've kind of suggested it, but the book is meant to be system agnostic. You can use this in your cyberpunk game. You can use this in your Shadowrun, your Cyborg, you can use it in any urban game. It is a modern game, right? Now, NewEdo has quite a bit of mystical influence to it. It's a sci-fantasy. While trying to figure out what to call it when we weren't calling it cyberpunk, we called it mytho-tech, which I still love. Mytho-tech is the perfect thing for it. It's like spiritual technology, and there's no conflict between the two of them, refreshingly. But you could drop these plot hooks, these NPCs, these detailed locations into any game system, any modern game system, and have them work. And so this isn't a NewEdo expansion. It's a system agnostic expansion that also is a particularly useful guide for NewEdo storytellers.
You briefly touched up there, but I really did want to talk about the NPCs. So I know that these are NPCs that you've created and used in your games, but there is such a wide variety of characters that have been pulled and put in here and statted out. So what are some of the NPCs that like you particularly think are good for people who are new to NewEdo? Why is the White Rabbit so amazing? That's my question. I love the White Rabbit.
Okay, so the White Rabbit. Let's start with that. The White Rabbit is
my favorite character.
Really? Okay. Well,
I love White Rabbit.
I keep thinking that my Easter eggs are way more obvious than they are, but the White Rabbit is from the Matrix.
Yeah.
I knew
that one.
Yeah. So, okay. Good. Now, Oh,
I love
well,
that.
whether or
Yeah.
not it was but so the White Rabbit is an anarchist DJ of from the Ghost Talkers um, path, which are a series of techno mystics in the game. And the White Rabbit is his motivations aren't entirely revealed during this, but he shows up in two or possibly three stories. And this is indicative of what the book is like too. It's a lot more. It's modular. You can kind of add these things up together. So White Rabbit is a DJ, and he's up to some mischief, and the mischief has a meta arc. But whether you pull it out of this book or not doesn't matter to me, because you'll be able to use him in his stories and pluck him from the back of the book out, his paragraph length character description, and use him in your stories whether or not they're NewEdo stories. But imagine a techno mystic anarchist, a non-violent anarchist, out to change how magic works in the city, and that's the White Rabbit. But then on the not complete opposite, but another end of the spectrum, we've got Tenda Hojo, and Tenda is
Cool.
The last bleeding end of what used to be a hugely powerful clan or family within the empire. We're talking 1,000 years old. And this clan at one point was so close to running the empire that they were touted to be the next shoguns, the Hojo. And you're introduced to the Hojo in the core book in the history section, talking about this conflict that ended with the seat of the shogunate being banned for 200 years, blah, blah, blah. But the Hojo doesn't appear past that history section. And Tenda Hojo is thrown into the 77 stories here, wherein there's a plot where the characters, keep in mind the plot hooks are paragraph or half page length. They're not full adventures. The storyteller does have to do some work. So the plot hook is that the characters, for some reason, are motivated by money, by guilt, by whatever it may be, by family rules, by etc., to evict squatters from an abandoned mansion in an old but wealthy part of town. And they go and, they might just go and fight the squatters, and that'll be the end of the adventure. They succeed, they get the reward, blah, 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 blah. But NewEdo stories don't tend to be so one-dimensional. And if you play it out that way, whatever, man, there's something lined up behind that, and there will be implications for it. But the depth to the story is that the squatters claim that the mansion was owned by the family dynasty, and that dynasty was the Hojo. And then you go back into the Hojo being 1,000-year-old power in the empire. And do you try to assist the Hojo to reclaim their glory, or do you kill them or evict them and take your money from whomever your paymasters are? Or do you analyze whether or not the Hojo deserve to get their glory back? And so Tenda Hojo, the character description in the back, makes it clear that she's angry, that her family was thrown into decline by choices made by her family members 500 years in the past. Whether or not players, the storyteller, modern perspective should believe that those justify the decline of that clan. And then the cool thing, well, one of the cool things about NewEdo is that the past is no better than the future, and the future is no better than the past.
Yeah.
Just because something is progressive doesn't make it good necessarily, because it can be attached to a bunch of negative connotations. Just because something is conservative doesn't make it evil, because it can be attached to some positive connotations. The game is set up to not decide for you where on the spectrum of science versus mysticism, past, future, tradition, technology, where in these spectrums you should fall. It's set up to create the conflict between those things and allow you to decide what the good and what the evil is, or what the story you want to resolve one way versus the other is. So Tenda and White Rabbit are these two, one's an anarchist. Well, actually, they could very possibly be aligned. One's an anarchist that wants to take down the system, and one's a rebel, but obviously a imperialist, but from 500 years ago, who wants to rebuild the feudal structure of the world in her own name. Both of them don't agree with the current government. They could very feasibly in the story be allies. Anyway, there's a long-winded way for me to say that the parts of the 77 stories in NewEdo are modular. You can pick and choose, but they weren't built in isolation from each other. It's not a D100 list of character names and this merchant has a chip on his shoulder. This room in the dungeon has blah blah blah. Those are useful for storytellers. Don't get me wrong. I've got Kevin Crawford books, but this is lore that you can drop into your adventures or create adventures around, and just make them one-offs. You can throw Tenda Hojo into your story and not have her matter, and she doesn't have to be a feudal Japanese descendant like she pseudo is in my game here, NewEdo.
Yeah.
She could be whomever in your game and still use all of the themes and all of the angst and all of the anger that she has for a justifiable decline in her family honor and renown and all of that. And it doesn't have to involve the scenery of NewEdo. So I say that you could probably take apart all of the 150 components of this and make 3, maybe 4 story arcs out of it. And I don't mean that there's not a lot going on. I mean that the meta arcs involved in these things are gratifying, such that if you're a storyteller that needs or would like to have a little bit of help filling in details, this book will do a lot of the legwork for you for broad arcs. I don't just mean micro transactions like grabbing the name of yeah. Now you can use, but you could use them for little things: a throwaway in a restaurant, a unique character in a busy sidewalk, that kind of stuff. It's got all of that, but because of my passion for this game and the setting and my history of building and all this stuff, there's a lot in the background that I think is obvious that may not be obvious to everybody. But as you play it or as you read the book, you'll be able to extract more from it than just D100 lists or just a couple of plot points or whatever it may be.
You got characters like that who are like really good for being like in those big story arcs, and then you have another character that I really love, and that's Twin Run. And audience, I'll just do like a Twin Run's great. I remember like, so audience, she's basically she's an Oni. She's a red Oni who's giant, beautiful, fun, and just a good time, who's known for drinking and brewing, and she's beloved by her neighbors. She runs a brewery. You can go and hang out with her just whenever she's in. And she's like more or less another non-violent character. So, or now she is.
Yeah, and so there's the 2 last ones were very meta arc and politics and all of that. But here Twin Run she's a brew crafting Oni that you could throw into any part of an adventure and just have her be a little bit of a breather.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the underlying threat of don't piss her off. She's 200 kilograms of muscle and drunken joy. But you know, she's a differentiated character than you may find in your typical settings.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's some tropes in these characters because I mean, tropes exist for a reason.
Yep.
Red Tooth is a good example of a kind of a tropey, slimy villain character. They're not all these anti-heroes that you love to hate or hate to love or fall in the middle. Red Tooth is someone that you could just set your characters against and not feel bad if and when they kill him. But yeah, there's more to it than just than superficial, descriptors, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I also want to put out, we talked about cross-platform a little while ago. I want to run back to that really quick because I had forgotten to say it in, but you have also composed a very nice little chart here of transferring the technical difficulties or the difficulty numbers of NewEdo into roughly difficulty values for other systems. So, audience, I just want to throw that in there. If you're interested in 77 stories, but you're like, I want to run it in
Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, Traveler, some of the more common systems. Any of the common modern, there's a D20 difficulty comp in here. And now that doesn't help for every stat of every NPC, but it does help say, okay, if there's NewEdo uses target numbers, TNs.
Yeah.
And so the stories will say a TN16 survival check will allow characters to do blah, 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 blah. And the PDF references, you can just click a link and go to the table, and they'll say TN16 is equivalent to difficulty class 13 in a D20 system, or 2 successes in a threshold system, or a DV from Cyberpunk of 15, or a dice modifier from whatever of +2. So I'm doing my best to make it broadly usable by storytellers that have been attracted to it because of its different themes and color and character and all of that. That it isn't just a NewEdo tool. Now, it's aimed at NewEdo storytellers because I want to build up my system, of course. But if by doing so, if introducing NewEdo themes into Shadowrun adventures, then hell, the world needs a little bit more levity.
Yeah. No, I love 77 stories. I have a pull quote for 77 stories. I like it so much. It'll kick your ass and like make you get up and just move in and really nestle into the world of NewEdo. It's a fun read too. It's not huge. It's the Kickstarter price for it is like really really accessible.
I probably fucked up on that pricing, but here we are. So listeners, it's $6 in Canadian for what will end up now being an 80-page PDF of very detailed and in-depth, non-list based storyteller tools and vibrant art and world building and all of that. So the reason I priced it at $6 was frankly because I wanted to get in the under $5 list on DTRPG, which is a business decision. And the core NewEdo book sells for 20 Canadian dollars and it's 300 pages. So I'm like, okay, well, $6 for this seems reasonable, but I've had a lot of feedback that I've underpriced it. Fuck it, it's not changing. It's going to be a $5 American, less than $5 American expansion or PDF that's usable for everybody. And if that motivates more folks to grab it, then that just helps NewEdo and helps storytellers out there. So
yeah, the physical NewEdo book, which I keep right by my desk because I like to flip through it. I'm not even joking. It's like I got, like I said, the physical version, the soft print. I do want the hard copy because
you have a soft cover. You don't have the color, eh?
Yeah. So
we'll fix that. We'll get that fixed, man.
We'll get it fixed down the line. But I wanted the game, and I was on a budget, and I got the game, and I did not break the bank with it. So both NewEdo and 77 Stories, super fairly priced. I think that's really important. And I think it's also really important to let people know that 77 Stories is already funded. It's totally funded and has already hit some stretch goals. You have, as of recording this, 25 more days to go.
Yeah, we funded in 69 minutes. And I was excited to get it funded under an hour. NewEdo, the core book, funded in 12 hours. The last $100 funded by my wife without me knowing. And that was exciting and cool. But this one funded in 69 minutes, and I was excited for it to happen in under an hour, and then it hit 69 minutes, and the childish little boy in me said, "That's funny, nice." and so it's funded. My art is financed. The campaign will do what it set out to do. If we can do more, I'm also will release a adventure module for NewEdo called the Heroes of Hyuga. And currently that's an Ashcan version with minimal layout and art. I would like to reach a stretch goal in NewEdo where I can do full art for that as well, but that will be available to the community regardless. At 10,000, if we can get there, I'd like to put out some STLs for NewEdo. Custom NewEdo world. I like my minis. I don't necessarily like to play grid-based games, but I'd like to have the tactile reminders of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Some STLs would be incredible, and it goes from there. So getting in now, if you're still like on the fence about whether like you would want to get into a Kickstarter or not, one, the book is written and done. Two, grab it now because you get a copy of the Heroes of Hyuga 30-page adventure module for free and all of its upgrades in the future, regardless of whether it gets upgraded with full color or not, which will be a couple of bucks that I'll end up charging for it eventually. Physical backers get a cool. It's a 1 million yen coin from Division 8, the treasury, which is just a tactile game token to play with in your hand as you play the game.
It's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen them. They're good.
Um,
Or
and
something like them.
there's a solid chance that that the PDF price goes up after the campaign is over. So at $6
Yeah.
Canadian, it's hard to argue with the content that you're getting. So consider coming out and supporting. I appreciate that if you can. If you can do so, there's value add to you for getting in at this level at the Kickstarter campaign and very little risk. NewEdo was funded 2 years ago, delivered a year ago, and has a 5-star review on DTRPG. And there's a lot of comments on 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 my delivery of it, in that I'm an over deliverer. I'm very transparent. I love this game. I love this world, but I'm also I'm a businessman and I want this to work. And so there's very little risk with backing a Salty Games Kickstarter. And I don't,
Yes.
I guess I hate chilling so hard, but I guess I am trying to sell something here.
No, it's totally true though. Even, I mean, like, just getting to know you a little bit more, reading more of NewEdo. I think I told you this, but NewEdo is a book that I read cover to cover in less than a week for our interview because I was so engrossed with just the core book.
That's impressive. I couldn't read the goddamn thing in a week.
I have a lot of games and I'd like started flipping through it a little bit before we started talking. And then we got in contact and I was like, I want to know more. And the way everything is set out had my storyteller's brain just racing. It's so well laid out.
Cool.
And I loved it. And like I said, I still flip through the book.
Well,
Salty.
I mean, it's a pretty book. So
It's a very pretty book.
if you're a collector of TTRPGs, like so many of us are, we have more than we'll ever play. I often get the comment that this is my favorite coffee table TTRPG at the moment, and that hurts. It hurts me a little bit because it means you're not playing it. But if it's, at least it isn't just buried on your shelf of shame that you know you've
Mhm.
purchased and you're never going to play. That folks will sit there and flip through it, and the awesome thing is that I'm part of a lot of game discords. That our Discord is so active and also positive and inviting and engaging and like moderating, that like there's no negativity on that Discord. Come in, ask questions, homebrew section, read the lore section. We've actually just the community was asking a question today, and we came up with a new I don't know what do you want to call it, poll or rule for Russ, that every week they're going to run a poll of 5 topics that they're curious about the lore of NewEdo on, like one-liners: the Shogun, the Empress, the Wheel, yokai, and whichever one gets the most votes, I will write a paragraph to a page on from my notes that got chopped, that didn't make the, that's on the cutting room floor, couldn't make it into the book. Such that every week I'm going to be putting out a new half a page or page of NewEdo lore on the back of the recommendations and requests of the community here. So I love it. I love being part of that engaged. Well, community is the only right word for it, because they're half building the damn thing. But so if you're on the fence and want to learn more, just I hope Zach will be able to offer some links to it and come stop by and get a sense of what's going on before you dive into the thing, or spend the $6. Come on.
Salty, we have to start wrapping up soon.
Yeah,
because like I said before this, I was like, I don't know if we're going to be here for an hour, but here we are.
Tech difficulties. We'll cut it down to 45 minutes, I'm sure, after some of my rambling rants. But
it'll be okay. But one of the things I want to know, because before I used to ask everybody for advice for creating and like advice for new writers, but I feel like after a little while we started to get a little redundant. So what keeps you creating in this space? Like, obviously NewEdo does, but what about that?
Oh, I mean, great lead in the community, man. It's
Yeah.
This thing lives in my head, and I love it. And it was a part of me before I started this Kickstarter. A group of friends and I played it to more or less of their enjoyment, some more, some less. But it was just a hobby. It was just something that floated around upstairs. Um, but I don't think that I would continue to create the way I do and desire to put it out there on a commercial basis because, man, selling is hard and
Yeah.
editing sucks and layout is hard and art is expensive. There's no AI art in NewEdo. Not, frankly, that I hate it, but that I NewEdo started before AI became a thing, and I have an incredible group of artists that I work with, and I want to keep paying them.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair.
And they and I storyboard with AI art, but then the art at the end is original from their hands. Just to be clear, but but this community that has grown up somehow around this game keeps me coming back to it, and I every day I'm on the Discord. Um, and the community there is they float their own ideas and they get in conversations about lore points and mechanical points, and they brag about their characters and they brag about the stories they're telling and all of that. And I love to just drop in sometimes and not say anything and see what's going on there. Like such an active community that I didn't create. I uh, uh, inspired, I guess, is it sounds like a fucking strong word, but more that like if not for folks enjoying this thing, I wouldn't continue to do this. But people
Yeah.
enjoying it's such a hit of dopamine, man. Like to see folks enjoying this thing that you created. I guess it's like being a brewer and people enjoying your beer. If no one enjoyed your beer, you might stop making it and just drink
Hmm.
someone else's beer because it takes a lot of work to brew in your basement. He
Yeah.
said from experience, and
The
no one
smell
enjoy.
takes forever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the beer that I made was terrible, and no one enjoyed it, and so I stopped doing it. Um, but like this game, if it didn't get the reinforcement from the community, and so getting back to your question, you know, creators looking for inspiration, they keep doing the work and hustling and whatever you want to call it, spending time creating instead of spending time playing a video game or playing
Hmm.
tennis or whatever it may be, spending time with loved ones. uh, mm, um, um, is find that community, whatever it may be. And if you're not yet playing your game at a local game store, go fucking play it at a local game store. That kind of thing. If you Discord already, find a way to make it more engaging because somehow mine is very engaging and I'm consistently blown away by the constant positivity that I see there and activity that I see there. Um, and obviously in game development, um, you need community feedback because you can't create these things in your head and have them be
Yeah.
functional games. They could be fiction, but they can't be games without third party feedback. Um,
Exactly.
but having that having an active community that what you have to be egoless with when it comes to the feedback. Accept it. Don't say but. Sorry, that's my dog snoring. Don't say but after accepting some critical feedback. Don't say but I wanted to just say yeah, okay, cool, and take a note and consider how it can affect your game, your lore, your whatever it may be, the future of the setting, the future of the game. Um, take the ego out of it
Hmm.
and anyways, it's so gratifying for me, um, and a ton of fucking fun too.
Yeah. Salty, when does the backing for 77 stories in NewEdo end?
It ends on December 15th, I think, at 9 a.m. So as
Eastern
Zach said,
Standard Time.
Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, we're fully funded. There's a couple of fun stretch goals. There's benefits to getting in now versus waiting for it to be available on DTRPG in probably April or May next year. Um, and get involved. And there's a bunch of links on that Kickstarter that hopefully Zach will link that you'll be able to
Oh, yeah.
find more information about the game if you're curious and don't want to listen to me talk anymore, which is entirely reasonable at this point.
You can also go back and listen to the other episode too, which will
Oh
probably
yeah,
also
please
be linked
do.
down below.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you will be the sole Ayumi. because
Yeah.
oh boy, that's a fun one. But
Well, yeah, we'll leave that. We can talk about that one offline.
yeah, we'll talk about that offline. Where can people find out more about you and NewEdo?
So our core site is www.salty-games.com, not slash, but dash. And that has information on NewEdo, its paths, its lineages, its lore, its history, its mechanics, all of, kind of a high level bunch of information.
Yeah.
You can also go to DriveThruRPG and search Salty Games or NewEdo, NEWEDO, all one word. And then we've got a Kickstarter running, which is too fucking long. We'll just have to drop a link in there. But ultimately, yeah, all information on me and the game is in mostly the website.
As always, audience, those links are going to be down in the description below. Go check out 77 Stories in NewEdo. Go check out NewEdo. This game is phenomenally well designed. Salty has created something that I absolutely love. I wish there was more content like other people were putting out, like even an actual play or something like that. Like I want to hear more about NewEdo. I want to hear how other people experience this world.
Can we get another minute?
Yeah.
So, okay, we got this community that has grown up around the way that was so active that I put out a third-party license just to be a developer that said, okay, I want you guys to have fun, make money, use my 3PL. And I forgot about it. I didn't think about it. I was just trying to be an open-ended, not World Wizards kind of developer. Use my stuff. Don't steal my art, because unfortunately I paid for it and I don't have the license to let you use it. But use my words, copy paste from the book. That's what the 3PL says, except the art.
Yep.
Just don't be a fucking douche. Yeah, the only rule is don't be a douche and don't steal the art. But then there's so much homebrew that appears that I wanted to create a way for community content to be unofficially but published, so other readers and players can benefit from the crazy, amazing, imaginative content that's being put out by the community without me having to say that's NewEdo canon or that's NewEdo created by Salty Games, me having to edit it because I'm particular, blah, fucking blah. So this weekend, I mean, I've been floating this with the Discord for months now, but this weekend I announced the creation of a title called Dreams of NewEdo. And Dreams of NewEdo goes back to the tenet of belief defines reality, such that your homebrew, Zach, can be so based on an area of the city or a group of people in the city that believe something so strong it's true for you and them. And that is canon. And I don't have to recognize it as official Salty Games. And if it's half decent and not douchey, I will put it under the Dreams of Salty Games. And douchey, I mean, like, don't be a bad person.
Yeah.
Dreams of NewEdo title that will be homebrew. Basically, this is the DM's Guild. This is the community content title that will be put onto a lot more NewEdo-based creativity that I just don't have the time to create. And it will be by different writers with different vibes. I don't have I'm not a horror fan. These aren't punk games. There's no biomorphism. Anyways, if your visions of my game or this world include more horror, more punk, more sci-fi, more mysticism, more religion, more whatever, they'll end up coming out under the Dreams of NewEdo titles by different writers. And I'll have a hand in them in some way, shape, or form. They won't be canon, but they'll be content for you to consume, ideally. And there's already 3 or 4 that, as soon as I announce this, we'll hopefully have something out by the end of the year in Ashcan form, and certainly multiple titles out by the end of next year. And that excites the fuck out of me to think that folks love this so much that they want to put out their stories, their campaigns, their races and paths and classes and all that stuff. But not just mechanics, their own lore as well. So I know this is 5 minutes that we weren't supposed to have on the back of this thing, but I'm just super stoked about Dreams of NewEdo. And this is not even my stuff. And all of these writers will get royalties and all of that. Like, this isn't just me riding on the backs of other writers. This is a community process that will expand the world to offer a non-punk based neon city to gamers. Or punk base if your dream of NewEdo is more punk, but then why play NewEdo? Why not just play Shadowrun?
Or Cyberpunk, yeah.
Okay, exactly. I'm done. I promise.
No, there we go. That's kind of what I'm getting at, audience. Like, I love this game and the community loves it. So I'll probably snag a link from you for a Discord because it is a really good place to start. Even
yes,
the Discord's amazing. The people are friendly. It's very active. It's a very active Discord, which is super nice, especially when we're looking at these smaller tabletop role-playing games that just don't get enough love. And like the love for NewEdo is big, but I definitely think more and more people will come.
I hope so, man. It's good to see.
Check those links down below, though, audience. Salty, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was great to have you back, and I'm looking forward to hearing more stories in this neon urban game.
Well, man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you giving me a platform to shout about this thing I've created, and the boat's out of the water now, but we'll get you out on it next spring.
Hell yeah. All right. And audience, thank you so much for joining us. Salty and 77 Stories in NewEdo, scheduled to launch really, really soon. So you have a couple more weeks from this, and go get it $6 for $6 Canadian. For you American listeners, that's only like $3. It's one less run at the Dunkin' or something. I don't know about America. I haven't been there in years. So take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you sometime real soon. Till then, though, bye. Thank you so much to Russ for joining us on the podcast again. 77 Stories in NewEdo has some of the most incredible prompts and pieces to get you started in a mytho-tech game. At just $6, it's also a steal, and it really does come with some incredible content, beautiful art, and it is associated with a really great community. So please check out the Discord. That link's going to be down below. Check out the Kickstarter, Fun 77 Stories, if it sounds like something you'd be interested in. And thank you for listening, audience. We've had some changes to our socials and stuff with how Twitter's now handling headers in their links, and it doesn't let me direct message new creators. So I've had a really hard time trying to network, really. We're shifting away from Twitter in general. So if you want to keep up with schedule for launch, what I'm doing, please check out Threads and Blue Sky, as those are two most promising places for me. I know it's a lot to ask, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass. I'm not going to lie there, but I am really trying to do what I think might be the best for creators and trying to get their stuff out there more. So I apologize about that. Please go give these amazing creators a listen or chat. They're all phenomenal. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you somewhere out there, though. Bye.